right. Welcome back, Little Warrior Church. Time for another daily Bible reading. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day, as I say every time. This is a Facebook group, so if you're over on podcast, you can join over on the Facebook group. You can read along with us. It's in video format if you would care to do so, so you can do that as well. Without further ado, let's get into some Bible reading. Today we're going to be in Samuel. Yet again, we're going to be in Samuel 22. Starting in verse 1. So Saul is after David, because David has a better reputation than Saul. They came into the town and they said, Saul has slain his thousands. He's a good warrior, but David his 10,000s. And somewhere that just sit wrong with Saul. You can see his pride getting the better of him, and he wants to end David's life. Why? Maybe because he wants to be the best. Saul wants to be the best. He wants everybody's. He wants to have his name on everybody's lips. Let's just put it that way. Starting in verse 1. David therefore departed from there and escaped to Adullam's cave. When his brothers and all his father's house heard it, they went down from there to him. Everyone who was in distress, everyone who was in debt, and everyone who was discontented gathered themselves to him, and he became captain over them. There were with him about 400 men. David went from there to Mizpah of Moab, and he said to the king of Moab, Please let my father and my mother come down to you until I know what God will do for me. He brought them before the king of Moab, and they lived with him all the time that David was in the stronghold. The prophet Gad said to David, Don't stay in the stronghold. Depart and go into the land of Judah. Then David departed and came into the forest of Hereth. Saul heard that David was discovered with the men who were with him. Now Saul was sitting in Gibeah under the tamarisk tree in Ramah, with his spear in his hand, and all his servants were standing around him. Saul said to his servant who stood around him, Hear now, you Benjamites. Will the son of Jesse give every one of the fields and the vineyards? Will he make you all captains of thousands and captains of hundreds? Is that why you all conspired against me, that there is one who disclosed to me why the son makes a treaty with the son of Jesse? And there is none of you who is sorry for me, or discloses to me that my son has stirred up my servant against me, to lie in wait, as is today? Then Doeg the Edomite, who stood by the servant of Saul, answered and said, I saw the son of Jesse coming to Nob, to Abimelech the son of Abithu. He inspired of Yahweh for him, gave him food, and gave him the sword of Goliath the Philistine. Then the king sent and called Amalek the priest, the son of Ahitub, and to his father's house, the priests who were in Nob. And they all came to the king. Saul said, Hear now, you son of Ahitub. He answered, Here I am, my lord. Saul said to him, Why have you conspired against me, you and the son of Jesse, in that you have given him bread and a sword, and have conspired of God for him, that he should rise against me, to lie in wait, as is today? Now keep in mind, this David married Saul's daughter. I mean, Saul's definitely in the wrong here, because David hasn't done anything to Saul. So, I mean, let's keep that in mind, that Saul's just going mad with power at this point. But remember, this is what the Israelite people chose. If you remember, God told them what would happen if they chose a king. He said they will steal your sons and daughters, and they will become slaves to this king. And look what has happened. This is what they chose. And when they call on God, this is what, I mean, I'm remembering what it said. When they call on God because of the distress of what the king has done, God will not hear them. He will not answer their prayers concerning this. Let's keep on going. Verse 14. Then Ahimelech answered the king and said, Who among all the servants is so faithful as David? Who is the king's son-in-law? I mean, I just said this. Ahimelech is right. I mean, who or something is so faithful as David? David hasn't done anything to Saul. Who is the king's son-in-law? David. Captain of your bodyguard? David. and honor in your house. Have I today begun to inspire of God for him? Be it far from me. Don't let the king impute anything to his servant, nor to his house of my father. For your servant knew nothing of all this, less or more. Ahimelech absolutely knew nothing about David and Saul's feud with each other. Or it's rather Saul's feud with David. David has no feud with Saul. The king said, "You shall surely die, Ahimelech, you and your father's house." The king said to the guard who stood about him, "Turn and kill the priest of Yahweh, because their hand also is with David, and because they knew that he fled and didn't disclose it to me." But the servants of the king wouldn't put out their hand to fall on the priest of Yahweh. They're smart. The king said to Doeg, "Turn and attack the priest." Doeg, the Edomite, turned and attacked the priest, and he killed on that day 85 people who wore a linen ephod. Oof. He struck Nob, the city of the priests, with the edge of the sword, both men and women, children and nursing babies, and cattle, donkeys, and sheep with the edge of the sword. One of the sons of Ahimelech, the sons of Ahitub, named Abiathar, escaped and fled after David. Abiathar told David that Saul had slain Yahweh's priests. David said to Abiathar, "I knew on that day, when Eog the Edomite was there, that he should surely tell Saul, 'I am responsible for the death of all the persons of your father's house. Stay with me, don't be afraid, for he who seeks my life seeks your life. You will be safe with me.'" Saul's just going mad with power. There's no way the priest knew what was going on. But Saul he wants to make an example, and he wants to look like he's a strong leader. He's going about it the wrong way. Chapter 23, David was told, "Behold, the Philistines are fighting against Keilah and are robbing the threshing floors." Therefore David inquired of Yahweh, saying, "Shall I go and strike these Philistines?" Yahweh said to David, "Go strike the Philistines and save Keilah." David's men said to him, "Behold, we are afraid here in Judah. How much more than if we go to Keilah against the armies of the Philistines?" Then David inquired of Yahweh yet again. Yahweh answered him and said, "Arise and go to Keilah, for I will deliver the Philistines into your hands." David said, and his men went to Keilah and fought with the Philistines, and brought away their livestock, and killed them with a great slaughter. So David saved the inhabitants of Keilah. When Abiathar the son of Ahimelech fled to David to Keilah, he came down with an ephod in his hand. Saul was told that David had come to Keilah. Saul said, "God has delivered him into my hand, for he has shut in by entering into the town that has gates and bars." Saul summoned all the people to war to go down to Keilah to besiege David and his men. David knew that Saul was devising mischief against him. He said to Abiathar, the priest, "Bring the ephod here." Then David said, "O Yahweh, the God of Israel, your servant has surely heard that Saul seeks to come to Keilah to destroy the city for my sake. Will the men of Keilah deliver me up into their hands? Will Saul come down, as your servant has heard?" Yahweh, the God of Israel, says, "I beg, tell your servant." Yahweh said, "He will come down." Then David said, "Will the men of Keilah deliver me and my men into the hand of Saul?" Saul said, "They will deliver you up." Now this is key right here, because what we're about to read is something that doesn't come to pass. David says, will Saul come down, and will he get me, and will they deliver him up into the hand of Saul? He says, "They will come down and they will deliver you up." And then David flees. And what? It doesn't happen. So this is proof right here that God can determine the future based on your actions. That's the key right here. In fact, let's just read it again, because it's super important. It's key in determining that God can see all possible futures. That is so key. Then David said, "O Yahweh, the God of Israel, your servant has surely heard that Saul seeks to come to Keilah to destroy the city for my sake. Will the men of Keilah deliver you up into his hand? Will Saul come down, as your servant has heard? Yahweh, the God of Israel, I beg you, tell your servant." Yahweh said, "He will come down." Then David said, "Will the men of Keilah deliver me and my men to the hand of Saul?" So the place he's at, Keilah. They will deliver David into Saul's hand. Yahweh said, "They will deliver you up." Then look what happens. Then David and his men, who were about 600, arose and departed out of the Keilah and went wherever they could go. Saul was told that David had escaped from Keilah, and he gave up going there. it didn't happen. What God said, what would happen, didn't happen. Why? Because of David's actions. He listened to God, he listened to Yahweh, and he split. So God can determine all possible futures, which is key, and we must go to God for all possible futures. Verse 14, David stayed in the wilderness and in the strongholds and remained in the hill country in the wilderness of Ziph. Saul sought him every day, but God didn't deliver him up into his hand. David saw that Saul had come out to seek his life. David was in the wilderness of Ziph in the woods. Jonathan, Saul's son, arose and went to David into the woods and strengthened his hand in God. He said to him, "Don't be afraid, for the hand of Saul my father won't find you. You will be king over Israel, and I will be next to you. And Saul my father knows that also." They both made a covenant before Yahweh. Then David stayed in the woods, and Jonathan went to his house. Then the Ziphites came up to Saul in Gibeah, saying, "Doesn't David hide himself with us in the strongholds in the woods, and the hill of Hachilah, which is in the south of the desert? Now therefore, O king, come down according to all the desire of your soul to come down, and your part will be to deliver him up into the king's hands." Saul said, "You are blessed by Yahweh, for you have had compassion on me. Please go make yet more sure and know and see his place where his hunt is." Wow. "And who has seen him there? For I have been told that he is very cunning. See therefore and take knowledge of all the lurking places where he hides himself, and come again to me with certainty, and I will go with you. It shall happen, if he is in the land, that I will search him out among all the thousands of Judah." They arose and went to Ziph before Saul, but David and his men were in the wilderness of Maon, in the Arabah, and the south of the desert. Saul and his men went to seek him. Then David was told. He went down to the rock and stayed in the wilderness of Maon. When Saul heard that, he pursued David in the wilderness of Maon. Saul went to his side of the mountain, and David and his men on that side of the mountain. And David hurried to get away for fear of Saul, for Saul and his men surrounded David and his men to take them. But a messenger came to Saul, saying, "Hurry and come to the Philistines have made a raid on the land." So Saul returned from pursuing David and went against the Philistines. Therefore they called that place Selah Hamakalaketh. David went up there. Sorry. David went up there and lived in the strongholds of En-Gedi. So I mean, that something is just going through my mind. Like, why would God allow all that Saul is doing? Maybe it's to strengthen David's character. Maybe it's to show that without God's blessing, it's all going to fail. It would just make more sense for God to say, "Well, Saul, you messed up. Time to get you out of office. Time to dethrone you as king." But that's just not what happens. He lets Saul do what he does. Maybe because he was crowned, maybe he stays there until he gives up his right to do so. Maybe that's how it works. But either way, we can safely assume that God just lets things happen sometimes. Sometimes he crowns people in places of power, and that's where they're going to stay. Because why? We chose that. And that's what the Israelites did. They chose a king, and they chose Saul. Why? Because he was tall. That's basically it. He was tall, he was good looking, and that's it. They didn't even look at the heart of Saul. And now they're the consequences are there. The consequences of him being prideful, seeking after David when David did nothing. He killed Yahweh's priests over literally nothing. And this is what the Israelite people chose. And even if they were to pray to God, God would say, "I can't answer your prayer because I promised I wouldn't." So let's go on to the book of John. John 10. "More certainly I tell you, one who doesn't enter by the door to the sheepfold, but climbs up some other way, is a thief and a robber. But one who enters in by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. Whenever he brings out his own sheep, he goes before them, and the sheep follow. They follow him, for they know his voice. They will by no means follow a stranger, but will flee from him, for they don't know the voice of strangers. Jesus spoke this parable to them, but they didn't understand what he was telling them. Jesus therefore said to them again, Most certainly I tell you, I'm the sheep's door. All who came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep didn't listen to them. I am the door. If anyone enters in by me, he will be saved, and will go in and go out and will find pasture. The thief only comes to steal, kill, and destroy. I came that they might have life and have it abundantly. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He who is hired hand is not the shepherd. Who doesn't own the sheep sees the wolf coming, leaves the sheep and flees. The wolf snatches the sheep and scatters them. The hired hand flees because he is a hired hand and doesn't care for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and I'm known by my own. Even as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep which are not of this fold. I must bring them also, and they will hear my voice. They will become one flock with one shepherd. Therefore the Father loves me, because I lay down my life, that I may take it again. No one takes it away from me, but I lay it down for myself. I have power to lay it down, and I have power to take it again. I received this commandment from my Father. So Jesus is the door, and he is the good shepherd. It's interesting to note that sheep, they really go on sound. And if you spend enough time with the sheep, they will learn your voice and they will follow it no matter where you go. So that's why Jesus is talking about that. Verse 19, Therefore division arose again among the Jews because of the word. Many of them said, He has a demon and is insane. Why do you listen to him? Others said, These are not the sayings of one possessed by a demon. Isn't it possible for a demon to open the eyes of a blind? Is it? It is the feast of the dedication at Jerusalem. It is winter, and Jesus was walking in the temple in Solomon's porch. You're supposed to stop at 21. Others said, These are not the sayings of one possessed by a demon. It isn't possible for a demon to open the eyes of the blind, is it? No, because they aim to destroy. We can see that with them going into the pigs. Jesus comes to a man named Legion because there are many demonic spirits inside of him. They're afraid that Jesus is going to say, go into the pit, which is like a holding place for the demonic spirits if they have crossed the line of what God told them to do. Because everything that a demonic spirit does, he gets permission from God. First, we give it permission, and then they have to get permission from God. If they overstep that boundary, then they are cast into the pit until the judgment day. So these demons are afraid that Jesus is going to say, go into the pit, and now they're in there for the rest of their life. So then they say, well, can we go into these pigs? And Jesus says, go into the pigs. The pigs don't run off and frolic and have a good old time. The demons literally drown these pigs for no other reason than the fact that that's their nature now, is to kill and destroy. It's in their nature. They have no nature where it's good anymore. I've listened to a lot of exorcist priests, real ones, who go through it, and they say that their humanity is lost. There was a man who was a psychologist, and he goes into these exorcism because they have to determine if it's a mental illness or if it's an actual demon. And he says, talking with a murderer, you can at least sit down and there's some humanity left inside them. Oh, you have kids? Oh, okay. Well, you went to college, all that kind of stuff. And they can joke around. They can talk. They can connect. Even though they came from very different backgrounds, they can still connect. But demonic spirits, they can't do that. They don't have any humanity left inside them. The only goal they have is to trick you, is to make sure that you are either dead or deceived or they can't heal the blindness. Let's put it that way. They have no healing power. Let's go on to some Psalms, and then we're going to hit Proverbs. Let's do this real quick. Psalms 115. Starting in verse 1. Not to us, Yahweh, not to us, but to your name give glory, for your loving kindness and for your truth's sake. Why should the nations say, where is their God now? But our God is in heavens. He does whatever he pleases. Their idols are silver and gold, the work of men's hands. But they have mouths, but they don't speak. They have eyes, but they don't see. They have ears, but they don't hear. They have noses, but they don't smell. They have hands, but they don't feel. They have feet, but they don't walk. Neither do they speak through their throat. Those who make them will be like them. Yes, everyone who trusts in them, Israel trusts in Yahweh. He is their help and their shield. House of Aaron trust in Yahweh. He is their help and their shield. You who fear Yahweh trust in Yahweh. He is their help and their shield. Yahweh remembers us. He will bless us. He will bless the house of Israel. He will bless the house of Aaron. He will bless those who fear Yahweh, both small and great. May Yahweh increase you more and more, you and your children. Blessed are you by Yahweh, who made heaven and earth. The heavens are Yahweh's heavens. But he has given the earth to the children of men. The dead don't praise Yah, nor any who go down into silence. But he will bless Yah from this time forward and forevermore. Praise Yah. And the last one we're going to do today is some Proverbs. Proverbs 15s. Proverb 15, starting in verse 18. A wrathful man stirs up contention, but one who is slow to anger appeases strife. The way of the sluggard is like a thorn patch, but the path of the upright is a highway. Dear Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for everything that you've given us. Help us understand your word as we're going through it this day. Help us to pray throughout the day. That's something I need to work on, Lord. Pray for you and help us that we may look to you towards the future, like what David did. What's going to happen if I go this route? What's going to happen if I go that route? We need to look to you to make the right decision, and you will guide us if we do so. Please be with us throughout the day. In your name I pray. Amen. Thank you guys for joining me May the 20th. I'll be with you May the 21st. I'll see you later.